Hello, this is the Aussie Arrowhand. What you are listening to is part of a research stream series about Buddhism. The challenge I've set myself is to go to the Wikipedia page Glossary of Buddhism and work through each concept A to Z and see what I can learn. Now, the word that I am looking at today is this one. So I'm going to try and pronounce this Alayavijnana. Alayavijnana. See store consciousness. So unlike a lot of entries that I've seen on this page, this one links you to another page in the definition, which is interesting because you could just put a hyperlink in there, but that's okay. So let's open this one. Alayavijnana. I'm going to check the pronunciation of that. So according to the AI, it is commonly pronounced as Alayavijnana. Vignana. No, Jnana. Jnana. Okay, so Alayavijnana. Alayavijnana. It refers to the storehouse consciousness in Buddhism. So let's look at the references there. Okay, Tricycle, the Buddhist Review. I might open that one there. I think that is a paid website, but yeah, there seems to be a whole article on this, which is good. Cleaning out the storehouse. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. Please subscribe to view this content and receive full access to Tricycle Substack. So what happens if I click free trial? Is it going to ask me to... Alright, I might sort this out later, and I may even pause the video so I can sign up for an account. But yeah, it looks like there's a website I can use here that is specifically about this topic. So there is an article. So I will keep this in my tabs. In some Japanese contexts, it is translated as Arayashiki. Okay, so let's take a look at some pronunciation websites. So howtopronounce.com is usually pretty good. So let's try this one.
Alayavijnana. Alayavijnana. Alayavijnana.
So Alayavijnana. Alayavijnana. Okay. I don't know about that nya sound. I'm finding that quite tricky, so I may end up omitting that. But Alayavijnana. I will go with that for now. So let's close that one. What is this Wikipedia page it has linked us to? 8 consciousnesses. I even find that a tongue twister. So consciousness, yes. Consciousnesses. That's a little trickier for me to pronounce. Okay, let's have a look at this. So the 8 consciousnesses, in Sanskrit, asta, Vijnana Kaya, are a classification developed in the tradition of the Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism. They enumerate the 5 sense consciousnesses, supplemented by the mental consciousness, Manovijnana, the defiled mental consciousness, Klistamanovijnana, and finally the fundamental storehouse consciousness, Alayavijnana, which is the basis of the other seven. This eighth consciousness is said to store the impressions, vasana, of previous experiences, which form the seeds, bija, of future karma in this life and in the next after rebirth. So, if we have a look here, we see that this comes from the Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism. So I'm going to shift this over here. I'm going to open up my notes and I'm going to start copying stuff over. So what I might do here is, how do I break that? I think you got to go from the corner. No, you just go like that. Alright, so put that there. Put it over there. I want a little bit more space here because it changes the formatting heavily. So we've got the 8 consciousnesses. It's to do with the Yogacara school, Mahayana Buddhism. And this term we are looking at today, Alayavijnana. So the term is Alayavijnana. One of the 8 consciousnesses. But not only is it one of the 8 consciousnesses, it seems to be one of the consciousnesses that is the basis of the other 7. A storehouse consciousness. So I might bold a couple of words here. Yogacara, Mahayana. So is it the 8th consciousness? This 8th consciousness is said to store the impressions of previous experiences which form the seeds. So I just want to make sure that this is the one it's talking about. So they enumerate the 5 sense consciousnesses, the defiled mental consciousness, and finally the fundamental storehouse consciousness. So what I think we have here is, this is one of the Buddhist theories of consciousness. So Yogacara seems to hold that there are 8 consciousnesses. Now I wonder if I can find a list of the 8. So let's just scroll down a bit. I'm going to skim through and see if there is a list. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to put this in full screen again. So this is a big table. And what is the section called? The 8-fold network of primary consciousnesses. And I feel like I probably should read this section here, so I've got a little bit more of an understanding what this is. Okay. All surviving schools of Buddhist thought accept, in common, the existence of the first 6 primary consciousnesses. The internally coherent Yogacara school, associated with Maitreya, Asanga, and Vasubandhu, I believe these are philosophers. So he's a bodhisattva. Asanga was a spiritual figure. And yeah, Vasubandhu was a Buddhist monk and scholar. Okay, the internally coherent Yogacara school posits the existence of 2 additional primary consciousnesses. The Klista Manovijnana and the Alayavijnana. And that's the one we're looking at today, the Alayavijnana, in order to explain the workings of karma. Okay, so it is related to karma. It is a karmic concept. The first 6 of these primary consciousnesses comprise the 5 sensory faculties together with mental consciousness, which is counted as the 6th. The Klista Mano-Vijnana is described as an afflicted consciousness, which exhibits an ongoing subtle clinging to self that provides the basis for the ego and disturbing emotions. Based on the Kagyu, the Kagyu scholar Third Karmapa Ranjung Dorje additionally points out that it must have an immediate aspect with the power to give rise to the 6 primary consciousnesses. Okay, so that's interesting. So let's take a first look at the table, see if we can piece together what it's talking about here. Okay, so we've got a subgroup, 1 to 6, then you've got the 7th, then you've got the 8th. Okay, the 7th and the 8th are asserted by the Yogacara school. Okay, so these 6 common consciousnesses are, well, according to this, they're recognized by all Buddhists. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to write a question. Okay. Okay, so do all Buddhist schools recognize the 6 consciousnesses? Because if that is the case, then you can say that one thing that is unique about Yogacara is that it talks about the 7th and the 8th. But I have a feeling they're not the only one. Okay, let's look. They're the subgroups. Now, let's have a look at this here. What does it say? Each of the 6 common consciousnesses, referred to in Sanskrit as Pravijnanani, are posited on the basis of valid, straightforward cognition on any individual practitioner's part or sensory data input experienced solely by means of their bodily sense faculties. The derivation of this particular dual classification schema for these first 6 so-called common consciousnesses has its origins in the first 4 Nikayas of the Sutta Pitaka, the second division of the Tipitaka in the Pali Canon, as first committed to writing during the Theravada school's 4th council at Sri Lanka in 83 BCE. So, what this is saying is these 6 have a basis in the Buddhist scriptures. And it can be found in the first 4 Nikayas of the Sutta Pitaka. Okay, so I'm going to note that down. I'm just going to try and organise this a bit. So I'll go the 6 consciousnesses. Is that what we call them? Or at least the first 6. They call them the 8 here. Okay, where is spelling? There it is. So there is a basis. There is a basis for these in the Nikayas. And I'm not sure why I've bolded that there. I think I'll unbold it. Alright, so let's read them. We've got eye consciousness. We've got ear consciousness. We've got nose consciousness. We've got tongue consciousness. We've got body consciousness. and mental consciousness. So we're going through the senses. We're going through each of the main senses. And these are associated with our cognitive sensor, as it describes it over here. Our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, body consciousness, our body, mental consciousness, mind. So there's a type of consciousness here. Ideation, thoughts. Okay, so this seems like a really elaborate way to describe something that is obvious. We've got 5 senses as traditionally taught to people, but I believe there's more than 5 senses, and perhaps it's that. Let's have a look at this. So we've got eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and then body. I think body, it could probably be argued that the body can be divided into a bunch of other senses, but I'm going to look this up. I think it will be easier to talk about if I do that. So, how many senses do we have, or do humans have? In case a dog is Googling. While traditionally taught as 5, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, humans actually possess far more, with scientists identifying anywhere from 7 or 8 up to over 30 distinct sensory systems. I just want to hang a bell on that term there, sensory systems. I like that. So we'll just write sensory systems. This is the AI. What is it referencing here? How many senses do we have? We have more than 5 senses. A neuroscientist explains the hidden senses. Humans could have as many as 33 senses from the conversation. I'm going to open this link. I want to see if it has a list. If it has a list. It may not. So, alright. So what does it say? I just saw a couple here. Okay. And this is the word I was sort of fishing for earlier. Proprioception. So what is that, you might ask? It is the body's 6th sense, according to the AI, providing an automatic internal awareness of body position, movement, and force in space, mediated by receptors in muscles, joints, and tendons. So if we go back to this system here, that is part of body consciousness. We've got proprioception. We've got the vestibular system. That's our sense of balance. I know a little bit about this because of medical stuff I've experienced. The vestibular system is a sensory apparatus in the inner ear and brain that controls balance, spatial orientation, and eye movements. So, yeah, you've got proprioception, the vestibular system. What is it? Sense of ownership? I don't know if that's counted as a sense. Just let me see what it's linking to. Sense of body ownership. So let's read what it says. Okay, so it's talking about interoception there. So that one's not bolded. So proprioception, the vestibular system, and interoception. So what is interoception? It's the eighth sense that allows you to perceive, interpret, and feel internal bodily signals, such as hunger, thirst, heart rate, temperature, pain, and it is crucial for emotional regulation, the physical sensations of emotions. So we can see there that proprioception, the vestibular system, and interoception are aspects of body consciousness. And I'm absolutely sure that the Buddhist practitioners understood this, even if they didn't have the modern scientific terms, they didn't have the research to sort of describe these things as they exist. I don't know if they could have understood the vestibular system, for example. How can our ear have anything to do with our balance? That seems a bit silly, just on the face of it, but yeah. So we got at least three different sort of senses that don't really fit into here, but may fit into body consciousness. Mental consciousness is about thoughts. So, alright, so I'm going to close that. There is a list here in the AI I could have read as well. So, how many senses do we have? Proprioception, vestibular sense, interoception, chronoception, so time perception. Thermoception, the ability to sense temperature changes. Nociception, the ability to perceive pain. So I'm referring to these not because I'm trying to sort of discredit this here. I believe that Buddhism should move with new information. It should take on scientific research. It should evolve its ideas. And what I'm trying to do here is just get to an understanding of this. So we've got eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, which possibly includes proprioception, vestibular sense, interoception, chronoception, thermoception, and nociception. And then mental consciousness, our thoughts. So to come back to the Alayavijnana, we've got a seventh consciousness, and we've got an eighth consciousness. What is it? Alayavijnana. So let's read these here. One here, in the Yogacara school, they think we've got a seventh consciousness. It is posited on the basis of straightforward cognition in combination with inferential cognition, is asserted uncommonly in Yogacara. So perhaps even in Yogacara, this is not asserted that much. That's what this is saying. I don't know what that's referring to here. Let's have a look. Song Kyapa's commentary on the Yogacara doctrine of mind. Okay, it's possible there's some information in that book that we need to read to better understand this. But this one, in the same category where we're talking about eyes and ears and nose and tongue and body and mental consciousness, we've got deluded awareness, delusion, the eighth consciousness, which it grasps to as a self, Disturbing emotion or attitude. What is that? Okay, type of cognition and cognitive sensor. The cognitive sensor of this is the mind. And once again, we're on to the eighth. We're on to the eighth, where the cognitive sensor is also the mind. This eighth consciousness, posited on the basis of inferential cognition, is asserted uncommonly in Yogacara. So the storehouse or repository consciousness. The Alayavijnana, also known as the appropriating consciousness, the basic consciousness, and the mind which has all the seeds. There's a Tibetan term for this and a Wylie term for this. What is Wylie? It's a kind of transliteration named after a scholar named Wylie. That's for Tibetan script. Okay, the surrounding world, the receptacle or container, flexive awareness, mind. I'm still not sure I understand what this is. So, okay, so that's a look at this table here. This table which is talking about different kinds of consciousnesses. I think most of us understand that humans have at least 5 senses. Sight, speech. We humans have at least 5 senses. We've got, sight, smell, hearing, touch, taste. And we got body consciousness, mental consciousness, and we got all these other systems that we just looked at, which, it's a fascinating topic. I want to learn more about each of those. But I'm going to have a look a little bit further down here. Let's take a look at the Yogacara entry. The text of the Yogacara school gives a detailed explanations of the workings of the mind and the way it constructs the reality we experience. It is meant to be an explanation of experience rather than a system of ontology. So, can we say that is phenomenology? Phenomenology. And when I type this word, phenomenology is a philosophical approach and qualitative research method focused on studying conscious experience from the first person point of view. So, I think this was early 20th century sort of concern with philosophers and psychologists. This formed the basis of the philosophical approach, or shall I say the psychological understanding underpinning existentialism. I want to know more about this, and I might even go so far as to ask, what is the relationship between Buddhism and phenomenology? Because whatever phenomenology was concerned with, I'm sure that you could make a case that Buddhism was engaging in it. It's kind of like mapping out the internal structures of your mind as you experience it. I think, and that is what Buddhists are very concerned with a lot of the time. So when we're talking about an explanation of experience, the key thing might be that, this might be more of a global. No, but you'd have to talk about this from the perspective of people engaged in meditation and who describe their internal experience. So, Okay, I don't want to get too caught in the weeds here, but the theory of the Alayavijnana and the other consciousnesses developed out of a need to work out various issues in Buddhist Abhidharma thought. According to Lambert Schmidhausen, the first mention of the concept occurs in the Yogacara Humi Sastra, which posits a basal consciousness that contains seeds for future cognitive processes. It is also described in the Samdurni Monoka Sutra, Kana Sutra, and the Mahayana Samgraya of a Sangha. So a Sangha talked about this as well. And also Vasubandhu. He's considered the systemizer of Yogacara thought. Vasubandhu used the concept of the six consciousnesses, on which he elaborated in the Trimsiki Karika, treatise in 30 stanzas. I'm going to go to the Yogacara Wikipedia page. I want to know a little bit more about the Yogacara school in general. So Yogacara in Sanskrit, that's how it's written, or Yogacara, it might still be Kara. Yogacara is an influential tradition of Buddhist philosophy and psychology, emphasizing the study of cognition, perception, and consciousness through the interior lens of meditation, as well as philosophical reasoning. Yogacara was one of the two most influential traditions of Mahayana Buddhism in India, along with Madhyamaka. The compound Yogacara literally means the practice of yoga, or one whose practice is yoga, hence the name of the school is literally the school of the yogins. Now, what does yoga mean in this context? And sort of my understanding of yoga is the popular understanding of, people pulling out a mat and sort of contorting their body into various positions to try and realign their energies. So let's read on. Yoga is a group of physical, mental, and spiritual practices or disciplines that originated with its own philosophy in ancient India, aimed at controlling body and mind to attain liberation, and is practiced in the Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist traditions. Modern forms of yoga are practiced worldwide, often mainly for exercise, accompanied by other elements like relaxation. So now that's what I'm familiar with, but I'm wondering if there's a deeper system involved. So yoga may have pre-Vedic origins, but is first attested in the first millennium BCE. It has developed in various traditions in the eastern Ganges basin and drew from a common body of practices, including Vedic elements. Okay, so yoga-like practices are mentioned in the Rig Veda and the early Upanishads, but systematic yoga concepts emerged during the 5th and 6th century BC in India's ascetic and Shramana movements, including Jainism and Buddhism. So back then, yoga was being developed, it was being practiced. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the classical text on Hindu yoga. I'm going to open that link. Samkhya based but influenced by Buddhism, dates to the early centuries of the Common Era. Hatha yogic texts begin to emerge between the 9th and 11th centuries, originating in Tantra. So, Hinduism. That's the overarching category here. So, okay, much of the yoga in the Western world is a modern syncretized form consisting largely of asanas, derived from Hatha yoga and Western physical culture. Okay, body postures. An asana is a body posture. What is physical culture? Body culture, health and strength training movement. And so I have come across this term before. Physical culture. And there is a gym near my house. It's a very small gym. I think it's called the School of Physical Culture or something like that. And there is a giant cutout of a man with his shirt off planning to box someone in the front window. And I always found that interesting. Okay, so it was introduced by gurus from India. Vivekananda introduced the Yoga Sutras to the West, and they became prominent after the 20th century of Hatha Yoga. So Yogananda started a Kriya Yoga Center in Los Angeles. That's this dude, Yogananda. Okay, so he's a yogi. And is that where yoga comes from? So the American yoga movement, that was this guy. So I just want to have a look at the Yoga Sutras, and I'm aware that I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but this is fascinating to me. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a compilation of Sanskrit sutras, aphorisms on the practice of yoga. Alright, so there's books out there that document the practice. I'd be interested to read those. The Yoga Sutras. I mean, there's a lot of yoga resources out there now, but a lot of it comes from this. And yes, this idea that it's sort of rooted in ancient practices that appeals to a lot of people. But I also find that there is some truth to it in that it can help heal our nervous systems. It can help us feel more relaxed and calm. Personally, I've been unable to commit to a regular yoga practice, but I have found doing things like downward dogs daily very, very helpful. See, I'm wondering if that move was a classic Indian one or not. So I might put that into my questions. So, what is the origins of the downward dog? Okay, so that was a huge digression. So Hatha Yoga is a branch of yoga that uses physical techniques to try to preserve or channel vital force or energy. I don't know what's going on with this dude's rib cage here, but he looks like he's lost a lot of weight, and that might be loose skin. So purifications. Yeah, alright. I'm going to close this because I've gone off on a huge tangent. Yogacara. So, alright, the practice of yoga. So, did Yogacara practitioners practice yoga as we understand it? Well, it sounds like they did, but we will read on. Okay, Yogacara was also variously termed Vijnana Vada, the doctrine of consciousness, Vijnativada, the doctrine of ideas or percepts, and Vijnap Maitreya Vada, the doctrine of mere representation, which is also the name given to its major theory of mind, which seeks to deconstruct how we perceive the world. Okay, was that the big table we just looked at? So what is it? Vinyap Timitrata Vada. So, no. So I'll go inconclusive on that one. which means I'm too lazy to look for the answer. But there are several interpretations of this main theory, various forms of idealism, as well as phenomenology, there you go, or representationalism. Aside from this, Yogacara also developed an elaborate analysis of consciousness, vijnana, and mental phenomena, dharmas, as well as an extensive system of Buddhist spiritual practice, i.e. yoga. Okay, so we got the term vijnana. Consciousness is mentioned in the early Upanishads. In the Pali Canons, Sutta Pitaka's first four Nikayas, it is one of the main overlapping Pali terms used to refer to the mind, the other being manas and citta. Okay, so that root there, Vijnana. Vijnana just means consciousness. But then we got store consciousness. So this is a special type. And it's related to the Yogacara school. I'll just finish this entry here. The movement has been traced to the first centuries of the Common Era and seems to have evolved as some yogis of the Sarvastivada and Sautrantika traditions in North India adopted Mahayana Buddhism. The brothers Asanja and Vasubandhu. Now, I did not know they were brothers. I considered the classic philosophers and systemizers of this school, while it is also traditionally attributed by Buddhist believers to the figure of Maitreya Nafa. Now, was he real? I think I read a suggestion So he was one of the three founders of the Yogacara school. Some scholars believe that Maitreya is a historical person who authored various Yogacara texts. Note that it says some scholars. So the traditions themselves have held it as referring to the Bodhisattva Maitreya, the future Buddha. Okay. Yogacara was later imported to Tibet and East Asia by figures like Shanta Raksita and Xuanzang. Today, Yogacara ideas and texts are influential subjects of study for Tibetan Buddhism and East Asian Buddhism. Alright, so there's Yogacara. Seems to be the foundation from which yogic practice came from, but also they really emphasize the study of, I would call it phenomenology. Cognition, perception, and consciousness as we experience it. And we draw it out through meditation. And I feel most Buddhists do that. But, yeah, this is another one of those schools that does it in a very, I guess, focused and intense way. They're probably not writing treatises on the Buddhist sutras. They're not engaging in a scholasticism. It's more about practice. But let's close that one. Now, I really want to read this article. I'm going to pause this stream and see if I can get access to this. Okay, I could not get that to work. The problem for me was it was asking me to set up a billing cycle, even just to access a free trial. So I will consider doing that because that publication looks really good. But for now, I'm going to have to skip that one, unfortunately. But I've found a bunch of resources on here that we can look at. So there's one here from Sutta Central. There seems to be a Reddit-like forum for Buddhism. We've got what is it? Stack Exchange. That's very similar, I think. I found a Britannica entry. So I might read through this one. Alayavijnana. This is a key concept of the Vijnana Vada consciousness affirming or Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism. Since that school maintains that no external reality exists, while retaining the position that knowledge, and therefore a knowable, exists. So how does that work? It assumes that knowledge itself is the object of consciousness. It therefore postulates a higher storage consciousness, the final basis of the apparent individual. There is a lot just in that. So let's try and parse that a little bit. So I'll go back here for a moment and I might make a bit of space. Since that school maintains that, look at this, no external reality exists, while retaining the position that knowledge, and therefore a knowable, exists. So if there's no external reality, what is there to know? So right now this has my brain contorting in various directions. It assumes that knowledge itself is the object of consciousness. So I guess my question is this a reference to sunyata? Sunyata. So emptiness. Okay, it signifies that all phenomena are devoid of inherent, independent, or permanent existence. So, to go to my questions, one of my questions is, does sunyata mean that no external reality exists? Okay, and I guess my other question is, if no external reality exists, then what is there to know? Knowledge itself is the object of consciousness. So that's an idea. I'm not sure how to take that one right just yet, but okay, so let's find that entry. So it therefore postulates a higher storage consciousness, the final basis of the apparent individual. So is this one of the things propping up the self? The universe consists in an infinite number of possible ideas that lie inactive in storage. That latent consciousness projects an interrupted sequence of thoughts while itself is in restless flux until the karma, or accumulated consequences of past deeds, is destroyed. That storage consciousness contains all of the impressions of previous experiences, vasanas, perfumings, which form the seeds, bija, of future karmic action, an elusive force that creates categories that are in fact only fictions. That elusive force, Maya, determines the world of difference and belongs to human nature, producing the erroneous notions of an I and a non-I. That duality is conquered only by enlightenment, which transforms a person into a Buddha. Okay, so where do I begin with this? there's this idea here. One aspect of this is that there are these ideas that lie inactive in storage. And this word storage keeps coming up. So storehouse consciousness, storage consciousness. So storage. What is being stored? What is being stored? Okay, so the universe consists in, not of, in. That, I don't think that's a typo. The universe consists in a number of infinite number. The universe consists in an infinite number of possible ideas that lie inactive in storage. So the possible ideas constitute the universe. So we're getting into idealism here. Right, it's this idea that the world is constructed by the mind. So, and there's a few definitions of this. Where is it? If I go to the Wikipedia page, idealism in philosophy, also known as philosophical idealism or metaphysical idealism, is the set of metaphysical perspectives asserting that most fundamentally, reality is equivalent to mind, spirit, or consciousness, that reality or truth is entirely a mental construct, or that ideas are the highest type of reality or have the greatest claim to being considered real. Ideas. Okay, so I may have lost a lot of people looking through this, and it's almost lost me. There are some extreme forms of idealism. I think solipsism is one of the most famous. So what is it? The view or theory is that the self is all that can be known to exist. And what's this? Only I exist. You are an illusion. Okay, if someone genuinely, truly believes that, how would you reach through to them? Is it possible? Only I exist. You are an illusion. It seems very selfish. And I think it's easy to make fun of this, but I don't know if this is a solipsistic view of the world. I want to go back to the Wikipedia page where I looked at that table. Storehouse or repository consciousness, the appropriating consciousness, the basic consciousness. And I feel this may be similar. And I'm very wary of drawing comparisons like this, making connections like this, but there's this idea, I think it comes from Plato, where humans are born and they already know things. They just have to recover that knowledge. We're born with something inside of us. And sort of modern theories of this are that there's these sort of universal things inside all humans that sort of come out as we grow up, as we develop. And I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but I feel we're talking about a storehouse or repository consciousness. Something is stored inside of us. But according to this Britannica article, it's the universe. The universe consists of an infinite number of possible ideas. It consists in these ideas that lie inactive in storage. That latent consciousness projects an interrupted sequence of thoughts while it itself is in restless flux until karma, or the accumulated consequences of past deeds, is destroyed. Okay, why would past deeds, why would karma have any influence over this? I don't know. That storage consciousness contains all the impressions of previous experiences, are these memories, which form the seeds of future karmic action. An elusive force that creates categories that are in fact only fiction. So there's this first aspect here, which form the seeds of future karmic action. To me, that reads a little bit like a determinist view. There's these things inside of us that dictate or at least influence how we act in the future. When it says karmic, does that mean ethical? Does that simply mean action? I don't know. An elusive force that creates categories that are in fact only fictions. Okay, so there's something inside of us that is both deterministic and is creating categories that are in fact only fictions. So it sounds like this kind of negative drive inside of us. And there might be a reason this is paired with deluded awareness. So storehouse or repository consciousness, is this like a, and I think this might be a better analogy than the Plato one, is this like a collective unconsciousness? So I might put that as one of my questions. Is storehouse consciousness like the collective, or right, similar to? Okay, so for those who don't know, this is the idea in Carl Jung that all humans have this sort of shared unconscious, I guess, cultural, mythological heritage that is expressed through archetypes, and these, I believe, these form structures in our minds. It's a very fascinating topic. I don't think this is talking about that, but this is saying that there's something in our consciousness that seems to be, I don't know, it's a, I think I might read this section here in a moment, but I want to just finish up with this Britannica article. That elusive force, Maya, determines the world of difference and belongs to human nature, producing the erroneous notions of an I and a non-I. That duality is conquered only by enlightenment, Bodhi, which transforms a person into a Buddha. So there's an elusive force, and it produces this sense of an I and a non-I. So I'm very confused, but I'm not expecting to understand this right away, right? I'm just trying to introduce an understanding, a sort of basis that I can follow up on. So I've got that there. So I'm going to close that. How does an Alayavijnana work? Let's look at the wisdom of the Stack Exchange board. And in particular, is it eternal, unchanging, like any other formulation for a soul? Is it a formulation for a soul that we might have seen in, say, Christianity and Hinduism? This particular idea that Alayavijnana is like a permanent self, is mentioned in Confessions of a Buddhist Atheist by Stephen Batchelor. So, alright, let's have a look at this. A permanent self. If there is something inside our brains that is fixed, is that selfhood? I don't know. So let's have a look here. In no way, Alayavijnana is eternal, unchanging. This is Buddhism after all, and nobody will posit totally non-Buddhistic concepts which could contradict basic teachings of the Buddha. Unenlightened beings may mistakenly perceive Alayavijnana as soul, but they may perceive so about any skandha. Okay, one interpretation of why skandhas are 5 is that it's 5 assumptions of self. Is it a skandha? And this is an aggregate. So let's look up skandha. It's the 5 aggregates, heaps or bundles. And my understanding of this, I might try a different website because I keep going back to Wikipedia. Okay, the 5 skandhas are components that make up our individual self or being. They are form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And I've come to regard this as kind of like the final boss of meditation. If you can understand these and you can incorporate recognizing these into your Buddhist practice, and then you can see through each one as an illusion, you will bust the illusion of self. I'm thinking that Alayavijnana is just another way of thinking about that illusion of self. I'm not exactly sure what it's talking about. There's a lot of message board posts here. Let's look at this one here. This is a very deep and complicated topic. It is so profound that it is very easy to take it the wrong way. The Dharma Master Wan Zhang tried to summarize these principles by saying, a seed produces a manifestation, and a manifestation perfumes a seed, simultaneously acts as a cause and effect. The seeds, the manifestation, and perfuming turn on and on, functioning at one and the same time as cause and effect. Consciousness from beginningless time is born and perishes again from moment to moment, ever successively changing. As cause it perishes, and as fruit it is born again. Through the evolution of other consciousnesses, the alaya is perfumed and forms seeds of future experiences. Okay, I feel this is starting to make sense to me. Its sequence of cause and effect is like a rushing torrent which flows ever onward in sequence, carrying with it seeds which sometimes float and sometimes sink, assume greater or lesser roles in activity or passivity. Thus, there is a successive sequence from beginninglessness of being born and perishing, so there is neither permanence nor impermanence. Okay, the Buddha himself said he didn't want to talk about the alaya because people would confuse it for a permanent self. So the answer to your second question is a clear and emphatic no. Let's honour his advice and not philosophise about it too much, because understanding and transforming the alaya. I'm going to look up alaya. Home, abode, resting place. Oh, okay. So, home. Home, abode, resting place, consciousness. Store consciousness. So I'm going to... I think alaya means this. Alaya. Home, abode, or resting place. Vijnana is consciousness. Okay, store consciousness, something stored in the consciousness. There's this idea of karmic cycles of rebirth that is at play here. I don't think the Britannica article quite explained that well. Alright, so on the other hand, from Wikipedia, a similar perspective is given by Walpola Rahula. According to Walpola Rahula, all the elements of Yogacara storehouse consciousness are already found in the Pali Canon. He writes that the three layers of mind, citta, manas, and vijnana, as presented by a Sangha, are also mentioned in the Pali Canon. Thus we can see vijnana represents the simple reaction or response of the sense organs when they come into contact with external objects. This is the uppermost or superficial aspect or layer of the vijnana skandha. Okay, consciousness skandha. Okay, it's one of the 5 aggregates. Right, if we're thinking about consciousness, it works in a certain way. There's different theories about this. There's very slippery ways of looking at it that I don't think are very easy for most people to understand. Alright, so manas represents the aspects of mental functioning, thinking, reasoning, conceiving ideas, etc. Citta, which is here called Alayavijnana, represents the deepest, finest and subtlest aspect or layer of the aggregate of consciousness. It contains all the traces or impressions of the past actions or all good and bad future possibilities. So what I like about this here is that people are referencing things. So you'd have to go through and check those references, but okay, sensory systems. I'm thinking Walpola Rahula has probably explained it in the best way there. Alayavijnana represents the deepest, finest and subtlest aspect or layer of the aggregate of consciousness. It contains all the traces or impressions of the past actions and all good and bad future possibilities. Okay, so that's Walpola Rahula. That's a quote we've got here. And there's more. I'm going to put that link here so I know where it came from. Anyway, go to page 217 of How to Measure and Deepen Your Spiritual Realization for the clearest account on a layer that currently exists. At least one that I trust, since we are in the territory of mind only after all. Below is a dump of that subchapter. That is really, really, really long. But let's have a look. He reckons it's the 8th alaya, consciousness. Okay, and as referenced, How to Measure and Deepen Your Spiritual Realization. Okay, what is this book? So, Hua Chin Nan, William Bodry. Okay, so there, another book for my recommendations. The 8th alaya, consciousness. The 7th consciousness, not the 8th, deposits its impressions on the 8th consciousness, or alaya, which, as we have seen, functions as the storehouse of all the residual impressions left by the functioning of the prior 7 consciousnesses. Okay, so that's interesting. So we go there. The storehouse of all the residual impressions left by the functioning of the prior 7 consciousnesses. And who's this by? We'll go Bodri and Nan. The alaya does no real judging on its own. Instead, it serves as a neutral storehouse of all the seeds and germs of everything within the 3 realms, including all our ideas and the impressions we experience. This is why it is often called the storehouse of our seeds of experience. It is also sometimes called the. There's some really dodgy some. Yeah, the spelling's a bit off here, but the formatting. So it is sometimes called the receptacle consciousness. I think those are supposed to be quote marks, due to the fact that these seeds lie within it. Since the intermingling of the seeds produce our karma, which is the retribution of actions we commit in either this life or from previous lives, it is sometimes called the retribution consciousness. All the consciousnesses have various names, and these are just a few we have for the alaya. Asanga said, the objective world and the subjective ego are the manifestations of universal consciousness. They are only manifestations of universal consciousness, alaya, which helps us further understand its great functioning. Since the fruits or phenomena which evolve from it mature at varying times and in varying categories, it is also called the varying maturing consciousness. The universal ground of the alaya is a neutral state, like a mirror which simply reflects things but whose images are not good or bad in themselves. The alaya consciousness is omnipresent. This is a really big passage, but also it's got a lot of information in it that is relevant to this. So, if not for the functioning, the alaya consciousness is omnipresent, but if it were not for the functioning of the other 7 consciousnesses, it would not create good or bad karma or interact with phenomena. Therefore, it is described as revolving, non-revolving, and indefinite. Okay, will that do for a basic sort of definition? That with the Walpola quote, and I like that this person has made this post. It is illuminating my understanding here. Okay, first of all, the way I'm seeing this, and if anyone out there is listening to this, please give me your perspective. I want to know. This alaya consciousness, right? Storehouse consciousness, home, abode, however you want to describe it. This seems to be saying that there's this cycle of cause and effect with all the parts of our consciousness. And from those parts, they drop seeds. There is a kind of byproduct that gets stored within us. Okay, we are storing things all the time. And not only are we storing things, there's things stored inside of us that seemingly come from culture, from other people. I may be way off with that, but this idea of cause and effect, where is it? Turn on and functioning at one and the same time as consciousness and effect. Okay, as it causes, it perishes, and as fruit is born again. Okay, so there's this constant renewal of things that are stored inside of us. So when I say that culture's involved, I don't think this is saying that at all. But I guess I'm trying to connect this to this idea of a universal storehouse, a sort of collective unconsciousness kind of ideal, or platonic memory, whatever you call that. So no, this may just be talking about our consciousness, and we've got this sort of cause and effect sort of thing going on between all of these sort of aspects of our consciousness. And the store consciousness is collecting all that stuff. It's building all that stuff throughout our life. And it seems to be controlling us in some way. It's described as a mirror. So yeah, so Rahula describes this successive sequence from beginninglessness of being born and perishing. So, so there's two things here: being born and perishing, and cause and effect working on each other. Okay, the alaya is perfumed and forms seeds. And I'm wondering, uh, within the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, he talks a lot about seeds as sort of mental formations in our mind. We start forming seeds of anger. We start forming seeds of any number of emotions, things, sort of mental manifestations, thoughts come into our brain, and these are the seeds that these can grow, these can mature into other things. I'm thinking this may be connected to that. I am fascinated by this topic. Alright, so the other thing here is, it's a storehouse. It's a storehouse of our seeds of experience. And this here says it functions as the storehouse of all the residual impressions left by the functioning of the prior 7 consciousnesses. So can we say that what we experience is stored in our minds, and that those memories that can sort of influence our behavior, influence our idea of self? If that is all it is, this seems like a very complicated way of saying that. This is one where I don't quite get it. I don't quite get it yet, but it is prompting thoughts in me. So this is a big topic, and I'm thinking for this one, I'm going to have to go to these books. This one here sounds really good. How to Measure and Deepen Your Spiritual Realization. Recommended by this man. Well, this user. Who is it? That's Eric. So, Med. I don't know. Male or female. Doesn't really matter. But that is a really good quote. That's a helpful quote for trying to understand this. So, alright. So what I'm going to do now is, this is probably the longest video I've done yet, but I'm going to go back here and try and summarize all this. So I've just been trying to grasp what this is talking about, and I don't know if I've got a very good summary yet. So the Alayavijnana, right, this is storehouse consciousness. Alaya means something like home, abode, or resting place. Here it's translated as storehouse. And Vijnana is consciousness, right? Something is stored inside of us. It's part of this 8 consciousnesses. And we've got eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mental consciousness. But there's 2 more. The first 6 are found in some of the early Buddhist writings, in the Nikayas of the Sutta Pitaka. Right? You can find discussion about these senses. The 7th and the 8th are associated with the Yogacara school, a school that emphasizes what I would call phenomenological experience. It is about understanding the structure of our minds, cognition through the practice of meditation, among other things. Okay, I think here where it says is inserted uncommonly in Yogacara, that just means that Yogacara asserts it, and that's a rare view. So, alright, so you got deluded awareness, and then you got this storehouse or repository consciousness. It's this idea of the basic consciousness, and it talks about how it's foundational. And these other consciousnesses, the things that we experience, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, all of the sense data that comes through that from our cognitive senses, all of that is stored in our storehouse. Okay, so these, we can think of them as memories, I think. Are they memories? They may not be memories. They may be unconscious sort of tracks that are left inside of us. It may be talking about how the nervous system is conditioned by these things. Partly. These are all aspects. So I'm thinking it's probably that. And there's this idea of seeds and watering and perfuming. So there's this cycle of seeds. Okay, I guess when they say perfuming seeds, does that mean kind of like watering? Because perfume, I don't know about that word. But yeah, there's this sort of cycle of cause and effect that's going on between all of these. And it gets stored. It gets stored in our consciousness. And there's these seeds, sort of the storehouse, they're waiting, they're latent inside of us. They are, yeah, so I think I'll stop there just for the definitions. But I've got this big list of questions now, which I'm going to go through. Do all Buddhist schools recognize the 6 consciousnesses? So, if they don't, and it may be possible that there's some out there that do not think about this. So I'm going to have a look at the AI. Yes, all major Buddhist schools recognize the 6 consciousnesses. Alright, so there's the 6 consciousnesses. Then you got differences between the school. So the Yogacara mind-only school make 8 consciousnesses. They add the 7th and the 8th, which is storehouse consciousness. So we can say yes. So this has messed up my numbers here. It doesn't really matter. Whoa. Okay. What is the relationship between Buddhism and phenomenology? So we know that meditation practice is meant to sort of map out the structures of the mind and teach us things about the mind. Okay, that is obvious. That is obvious. I think the Yogacara school might be a little bit different. It's trying to take more of a, I guess, a more intense approach. So, and while phenomenology might be, you could argue it is something that started quite late. So it's probably, what is it, early 20th century, that seeks to objectively investigate the nature of subjective conscious experience and world disclosure. What is it? How things become intelligent and meaningfully relevant to human beings. Okay, and there's your sort of existentialist adjacents and the existentialist. Okay, so let's close that one. So what is the relationship between Buddhism and phenomenology? Phenomenology was its own movement. Let's say 20th century, could have been earlier. Oh well. Was its own distinct 20th century movement, but the idea of investigating our own minds and mapping out consciousness did not start there. Okay, it's a bit of a silly one. So what is the origins? What are the origins of the downward dog? Let's have a look. I want to know if it's in the yogic manuals. So Adho Mukha Svanasana originates from ancient Indian yoga designed to mimic the stretching posture of a dog. Adho, down, Mukha, face, Svana, dog. So, the asana, it's an asana. Asana means pose. Foundational posture in modern yoga. It's not explicitly in ancient Hatha texts. Where did it come from, though? So let's have a look here. There's a whole Wikipedia page on it. And there it is. Downward dog. And I love these. These are really, really good. I think just putting your head underneath your body and sort of getting the flow around. When you stand up, I find when I stand up, I always get a head rush. It feels amazing. So downward dog pose, downward facing dog pose, or down dog, also called the Adho Mukha Svanasana, is an inversion asana in yoga as exercises, often practiced as part of a flowing sequence of poses, especially Surya Namaskar, salute to the sun. Okay. It's a flow sequence of 12 linked asanas. Okay, this is what I'm looking for, the etymology and origins. The name is not found in the medieval Hatha yogic texts, but a similar posture, Gajasana, elephant pose, which is that, was described in the 18th century. The text calls for it to repeat it over and over again from a prone position. Okay, so it does have ancient origins. It was not called a downward dog then. But, yeah, I really love the downward dog. It's so, she's an actual dog. That's kind of cool. Wow, it's a kid. Downward dog, for example. Alright, so what are the origins of the downward dog? So, not found in the sort of ancient text. At least it wasn't called that way. Wasn't called that. But similar poses could be found. Okay. Alright, from downward dogs to sunyata. Does sunyata mean that no external reality exists? It does not mean that there's no external reality, nor does it mean that the world is a non-existent void. Instead, it means that all phenomena, including external objects of the self, are empty of intrinsic, independent existence. What is the difference? Okay, it's there because my mind says it's there. Is that right? So we've got a few references here. Well, we got the Lion's Roar. I'm going to look at the page there on the Lion's Roar. Emptiness, sunyata. Okay, so I want to get rid of all that purple text. Okay, the term emptiness describes how things do not exist. By saying that phenomena are empty of solid, separate and permanent existence, the teaching of emptiness points us towards their true nature, which is impermanent, always changing and dependent on causes and conditions. Emptiness is a core teaching of Mahayana Buddhism and is summarized in the famed Heart Sutra. Emptiness means that all things lack, are empty of, inherent or independent existence. Neither we, other beings, nor any phenomenon in the universe is a permanent, separate or independent core, soul or identity. Nothing exists in isolation or on its own. Everything is interdependent and exists only in relation to other causes and conditions. So, alright, so we're talking about inherent or independent. That's not saying that there's nothing there. Right, that's not saying that there's not a thing in itself, to sort of use Kantian language, as I did in a video I looked at recently. That might have been a category error. But also, this is affirming into being, as Thich Nhat Hanh called it. It's affirming is it dependent origination? There's a couple of terms for this, and it's not one that I've fully grasped yet. So dependent origination, yeah. Okay, there's another term for this. I can't remember what it is right now, but all right, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. Right, perhaps I've misunderstood that. There's nothing there. Well, there's nothing there that's not part of this sort of chain of interdependence. Okay, if no external reality exists, then what is there to know? And when I Google this, it's just a prompt. I'll see where it takes me. So, knowledge is limited entirely to the contents of consciousness. So, what we are experiencing, this idea that if there's no external reality, if there's no noumena beyond the phenomena for me to access, if there's nothing real there, then all I can see is what's going on in my mind. Okay, I think therefore I am. I think that is probably one of the best summaries of this. So, okay, so the contents of our mind. Now, is storehouse consciousness similar to the collective unconsciousness? I think I really tried to reach to make it similar. I don't think it's saying that though. It's talking about the way our minds are constructed. So, and if I go back to that, where is it? Alayavijnana. So let's find the word. I just want to copy and paste it. Go back to that Britannica article. And I want to see if I can sort of tease this out here. I feel, what does this say here? Britannica AI? Is this just an AI generated thing? No, it's a feature. So did a human write this? It says Britannica editors. Okay, they've got names. Matt, Stefan, Gloria, Loafer. Alright. I'm going to read through this again. It's a key concept of the Vijnana Vada consciousness affirming or Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, since that school maintains that no external reality exists. I don't think that's true. I think that might be a misreading of sunyata, of emptiness. So there might be some other concept or theory it's being engaged with here that I don't know about. But I don't think that's true. I think it's true that no external reality that is unconditioned by other things exists, while retaining the position that knowledge and therefore knowable exists. It assumes that knowledge itself is the object of consciousness. Alright, so what is this talking about? It therefore postulates a higher storage consciousness, the final basis of the apparent individual. I think this part is true. It was talking about how there's it helps prop up the idea of an I, of a separate self. Right, so, oh, okay, so, and that I is in conflict with this sort of idea of dependent origination, interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh calls it. The universe consists of an infinite number of possible ideas that lie inactive in storage. That latent consciousness projects an interrupted sequence of thoughts, while it is itself in restless flux until karma or accumulated consequences of past deeds is destroyed. So I don't know if this author is saying that. I think someone's being commissioned to write this and they haven't understood it. Right? Or maybe he does understand it and I'm just not grasping his argument. But storage consciousness. It contains all the impressions of previous experiences. Yes. Okay, so everything we experience that comes through the other senses, it stores something inside of us, right? It forms the seeds. And those seeds can be watered. It creates categories that are in fact only fictions. It is propping up the self. The elusive force determines the world of difference and belongs to human nature, producing the erroneous notions of an I and a non-I. I don't know about this human nature bit here. It's a bit confusing. Okay, only enlightenment can conquer this duality and turn a person into a Buddha. So what was the question I was trying to answer? Is storehouse consciousness similar to the collective unconsciousness? I'm going to say no. It seems to be more personal, localized, to do with the individual. Alright, so there's a lot for me to think about there. And this is one of those episodes which was a little bit frustrating because I felt I just wasn't quite getting it with these resources, but I bet that there are some writings out there that explain this in a very clear way. That way might be wrong, but yeah. I'm going to leave this here. I'll just give it like a very brief summary. And how do we pronounce it again? Alayavijnana, storehouse consciousness. These are the accumulated. This is the accumulated residue of everything we experience that sort of helps prop up a self. And that might be a terrible definition, but if anyone's got a better one, please let me know. Thank you.